Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever and wherever you're watching or listening. This is the Stochastic NHL DFS Strategy Show, and I am your host, Michael Clifford, aka Slim Cliffy, on Twitter, Blue Sky, wherever else. Flying solo today. Mr. Harris is at a doctor's appointment that had been planned, so he's out. Obviously, Jake is taking care of his newborn, so you're stuck with me today. We're going to try our best to get through these 10 games here tonight. Before we go too much further, just want to make sure everybody throws us a like, throws us a subscribe if you haven't already. Those things certainly help us out, help keep these shows coming, help keep this channel growing. If you don't appreciate our video, and I can't really blame anybody for not wanting to stare at Josh and I for an hour. We are available in podcast form wherever you get your favorite podcast. Please leave 5 stars if you can. Those things help us out as well. And we have a Stochastic Hall of Fame that we'll get to in a minute. We are presented by Bet365. They have been our sponsor the entire season, so thank you very much to Bet365. But yes, if you want to get into the Stochastic Hall of Fame, this is how you do it. You download the Stochastic Avatar from stochastic.com/avatar. Placed in the top 3 of any contest with at least 5,000 contestants, and there are a bunch of those on DraftKings tonight, thanks to a pretty big prize pools, pretty much across the board. So tonight is a night you can get into the Stochastic Hall of Fame. You tweet that win if you do finish in the top 3 of a contest with at least 5,000 contestants. You tweet that to the Stochastic Hoff account, or you can just email it to support with a screenshot of your win. You do all that, you get to win a free month of Stochastic, any package of your choice for that month. Just make sure that you haven't won already, because it's only available once a year. Though I suspect if you're, as Josh says, if you're winning multiple times every month, you're probably not dying for the NHL package. And we did have a winner last week amongst the people that do watch the show. Chris Worstel took down $1,000 over on FanDuel. We've had some winners in the chat. Certainly, B. Huseman hit over. I think it was over the weekend. Chris Negus took down the forecheck, the $4. I believe it was on Saturday or Sunday. He's been on a little heater as well. So congrats to the winners. Hopefully, we can get a couple more here tonight. Again, please like and subscribe if you have not already. Okay, we do have 10 games to get through tonight. I'm going to try to limit my sips of water as little as I can, but I did go for a run earlier, so I am a little parched, as they might say. We do have 10 games, 10 very interesting games. I don't know, maybe 9 interesting games, and then there's a Seattle-Arizona game also on the slate. But no, there are some really big totals that we do have to get through. We also have projections and top stacks are up on the site there a little late today, as we had somebody training to do this NHL stuff so that Jake doesn't always have to do it himself. So please bear with us while that goes on. But everything is up, so Stochastic members can go up and check it out on the site, including my free article. Usually happens almost every day except for Sundays. Just head on over to the NHL section at stochastic.com. My article is up for today. It'll be up tomorrow. It'll be up Thursday, and so on and so forth for the rest of the season. All right, let's get to these games. Let's get to this first game. It is a very interesting game. We have the Buffalo Sabres with a 2.8 total. They're going into Carolina, face the Carolina Hurricanes. Carolina has a 3.8 total. The reason I find that interesting is Carolina's goaltending has been pretty terrible so far this season, almost regardless of who they put in net. Despite that, you only see a 2.8 total for Buffalo, which I think is tied for the lowest of any road team here tonight. Get to a couple more of those games, Nashville being one of them. But yeah, a low total. And that's also with Buffalo stacking their top line again. The Tuck, Thompson, Skinner line was put together in their last game. Looks like they're going to be going out again here tonight. As our top stacks tool will show here in just a second, there's not much ownership coming in on that Buffalo line on DraftKings. 2% expected ownership on the Tuck, Thompson, Skinner line, 10% top 2 stack percentage. Now, they are a very good line. Don't get me wrong. They have struggled this season, though. 2.4 expected goals for, 2.1 actual goals for. One of the big problems when I was looking into why is they're taking a lot of shots basically from like the tops of the circles. Where Alex Ovechkin might typically stand on the power play. That's pretty much where they're shooting, whether it's Tuck Thompson or Skinner. They're not generating a whole lot from the slot, as opposed to what they were doing last year. And then you combine that with going into Carolina, once again, a great defensive team this season. It's just their goaltending that has let them down. It kind of makes sense that you're seeing that low total. This line hasn't been very good so far this year. Of course, they can break any slate wide open, but they're facing the Jordan Staal line in that shutdown matchup as they go into Carolina. Josh and I always say that's a very, very tough matchup. Once again, this year, one of the best shutdown lines in the league. That Jordan Staal line sitting at 1.3 expected goals per 60 minutes so far this year. That's about half the league average. So yes, very, very difficult matchup. I imagine there are going to be a lot of people playing a lot of lineups tonight with so many big contests. So if you want to, if you're playing 50 lineups, maybe you want to throw a couple Buffalo in there. No problem with that. I just don't think they're a team I'm particularly targeting, especially, you have Dylan Cousins out of the lineup. He hasn't really been having a great season, but the guys they're replacing him with certainly aren't a whole lot better. So with no Dylan Cousins, no Matthias Samuelsson on the blue line, they are missing a couple players. Victor Olofsson is going to have to probably draw into the lineup with Brandon Biro hitting the IR. So there's just a lot of moving parts. You basically only have to play that Buffalo top line if you want to. I don't think I'm going to get to that point. Carolina side is a little bit more interesting, obviously, with that 3.8 total. The issue is they've kind of broken up their lines a little bit. Stefan Nason up to the top line with Sebastian Aho and Seth Jarvis. Jack Drury centering what I guess would be the third line with Martin Necas and Michael Bunting. But again, they use that Jordan Staal line in a shutdown matchup. So I'm wondering how the ice time is going to work out here. Because if Jordan Staal's line is out against Thompson's for all their ice time, at least at 5-on-5, that's got to be, 11, 12 minutes or something like that. There's only so much ice time to go around, especially when you factor in special teams. So I'm wondering how much ice time that line is actually going to get. It's actually that Carolina 2 line that is interesting me here tonight. Jesperi Kotkaniemi is a guy that has kind of struggled at the NHL level, but he has really had a really good season so far. Career high shot rates by a wide margin on a per minute basis. He's really driving the offensive play, which is something that he had struggled with in seasons past. The line is pretty leaky defensively, but again, where they're not going to be facing that top Buffalo line, there's not a whole lot in the Buffalo depth that really concerns me matchup-wise. So I don't mind that Carolina 2 as a filler line. The problem is that they are a little bit expensive. They are actually more expensive on DraftKings than the top line. Svechnikov is still $3,800 on FanDuel, so maybe it makes more sense over there. I think I do have interest in that Carolina 2 line. Just don't overlook Carolina just because they're spreading their players basically across 4 lines. That 3.8 total is something that we can't just walk away from. So even if it's just a one-off like Seth Jarvis or like Martin Necas or something like that, I think that's something that DFS players certainly can do here tonight. Moving on, we have the Tampa Bay Lightning going into Montreal. Excuse me. Tampa Bay has a 3.5 goal total. Montreal actually has a 3.1 total, which is not nothing. It's the same as the New York Islanders that we'll talk about next. It's higher than St. Louis and Arizona, certainly higher than Anaheim and San Jose. So they're expecting quite a bit of offense here in this game tonight. Maybe not so surprising when you see that, Montreal hasn't really been that bad offensively so far this season. They're facing a Tampa Bay team that is playing their second game in as many nights. Tampa Bay is also likely going to be on their third string goalie, Matt Tompkins, because Jonas Johansson played last night, and obviously Andrei Vasilevsky's still not back in. So 3.1 is nothing to just kind of scroll past. So I do find it interesting to see Montreal not coming in with a whole lot of ownership, honestly. Again, I'll bring up the top stacks tool here quickly. That top line coming in at about 2.3%, the Monahan line 2.1%. the new hook line even lower. That new hook line, I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan. I'd like to think I can speak somewhat intelligently on this. I don't think that's going to be a very good line. Christian Dvorak returned from injury in their last game. His play has fallen off basically since they signed him. Josh Anderson's down on the third line. He's just a defensive black hole. Like Newhook can only do so much. If you want a one-off Anderson, one-off Newhook or something like that, I think that's fine. I just don't know about three-man stacking. I know why people are doing it is to get to the expensive Colorado guys that we'll get to later, but just not something I'm interested in. Montreal, too, certainly in play. They've been perfectly fine this year. 3.4 expected goals, 4.8 actual goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. Problem is this. A fair bit of Sean Monahan's production has come on the power play so far this season. He's shooting 43% on the power play. Now, obviously power play shots, you're going to get better looks. You're going to get better quality. 43% is just absurd. Like half that would be a pretty high rate. So I think there's some power play regression coming from Monahan. So I think that's something I might want to avoid. It's the Montreal top line that I would have interest in. The top line has actually been pretty good this year at both ends. As long as they haven't had Josh Anderson there, 2.7 expected goals for, 2.8 expected goals against per 60 minutes for the top line without Anderson on the top line, and he's not going to be there. It's going to be Juraj Slafkovsky. Montreal's big issue was generating shot volume, their top line last year. They really heavily leaned into the shot quality bit, not so much shot volume. That's getting better. And they're also going to be, like I said, they're going to be facing a Tampa Bay team that is probably going to come in a little bit tired. They're going to be facing a Tampa Bay team that has looked leaky defensively so far this season. I mean, they're just coming off a game where they gave up 6 to Toronto. I mean, Toronto's obviously a better team than Montreal, but 6 goals, and you have your third string goalie starting the next night. So, yeah, I do have some interest in Montreal here. They're coming in with positive leverage. Slafkovsky being priced where he is means that they're not in an expensive stack. They're under 16,000 on DraftKings here tonight. So I do have some interest in Montreal. One, it's what we do with Tampa here, because Tampa did put Brandon Hagel back on the top line in their last game. Top line coming in at 8% ownership, 14.6% top 2 stack on DraftKings here tonight. That gives them positive leverage, and they do have a big total. Like, with 3.5 total, especially on the road, nothing to seize at. A big part of that is the Tampa Bay power play. Tampa Bay's top power play unit has scored 12 power play goals in 12 games. That's just the top unit. That's not including the secondary guys. And Montreal is giving up the second most power plays per game to the opponent this season, and also allowing a slightly over 1 power play goal against per game. So it's a really good matchup for that Tampa power play. You get 2 guys on the second line, Stamkos and Nick Paul on the top power play unit. So if you want to save a bit of money, dumping down to there, I think is perfectly fine. But I would probably just go right back to the top line. Brandon Hagel's looked phenomenal this year. He's rarely played with Point and Kucherov, where he was pretty much all of last year. So I think he gives full 3-man stack them. If I were to one-off any player in this game, it would be Stamkos, just because of that power play matchup that Tampa Bay has here tonight. I did write him up in the picks article today. So I don't mind playing Stamkos as a one-off. I think if I'm going to full stack, I am going to go to the Tampa Bay top line here tonight. Ryan's asking, who would I stack for GPPs on FanDuel here tonight? Interesting. We just mentioned Carolina with Andrei Svechnikov being so cheap. I think Kotkaniemi certainly makes sense. The Tampa Bay top line is the top leverage line on FanDuel here tonight per the top stacks tool. Just to kind of show everybody I'm not lying here. 15.7% top 2 stack, 5.6% ownership, top leverage by quite a bit. So I think Tampa Bay certainly makes a lot of sense on FanDuel here tonight, and pretty much just in general. All right, let's move this along. Next game, Minnesota Wild, 2.9 total. They're going into New York to face the Islanders. The Islanders have a 3.1 goal total. It looks like it's going to be Semyon Varlamov starting for the Islanders. I think they have a game tomorrow night, so it makes sense. He goes tonight. Sorokin can probably go tomorrow. Marc-Andre Fleury starting for the Wild. The big news over the weekend, Josh and I celebrated pretty heartily that Marco Rossi was joining the top line with Matt Boldy. And Kirill Kaprizov, Rossi scored in that game. They stormed back from a 3-0 deficit to the New York Rangers. So, they all played over 21 minutes. What the Islanders look like, or lines are going to look like, is kind of up in the air. Bo Horvat has been missing practice. It looks like he's going to be a game time decision. Matt Barzal said he hopes he can play. I'm not sure that he does. If he doesn't, the top line is probably going to be Anders Lee, Matt Barzal, and Oliver Wahlstrom. That particular top line for the Islanders has not been very good offensively in their minutes together. I like Wahlstrom as a player, but he's honestly a guy that just misses the net too much. Like, if you look at his shot attempts and shots on goal, like, there's just a really big discrepancy there. And then when you factor in that Matt Barzal has not really been a good goal scorer in his career, Anders Lee certainly on the downswing. Islanders 1, I'm passing on here tonight. Islanders 2 is where things get a little bit more interesting for me. They typically have a lot of ownership. They don't have much here tonight. 2.1% top 2 stack on DraftKings, 2.5% ownership. They have just been generating offense at will so far this season. Over 100 minutes together, 3.9 expected goals for, 4.1 actual goals for. Those are just tremendous offensive numbers. On top of that, they're going to see a little bit of that top line from Minnesota. And as good as that top line from Minnesota has been, I think could be offensively, they're certainly not going to be very good defensively, especially with Jared Spurgeon out of the lineup. Now, that's not going to be their sole matchup here tonight. They probably will see a little bit of that Joel Eriksson-Ek line. But Nelson, Palmieri, and Engvall is the line that I think I like best in this game entirely. Palmieri and Nelson both on the top power play unit. Nelson has been just shooting an absolute ton so far this season. He's at 37 shots on the year, 5 goals in 10 games. So he's certainly picked right off where he's been the last couple of years. So I really do like that Islanders second line here tonight. 13,400 on DraftKings. They're very reasonably priced. They're one of those filler stacks you can put in, if you're playing Detroit, later in the slate, if you're playing Pittsburgh, if you're playing maybe not Colorado, depending on what you do with them, but certainly like Winnipeg or Arizona. Like, there are a lot of stacks, top line stacks that you can fit in with that Islanders second line. So I think that would be the direction I would go in this game. All right, next of the early games, Detroit 2.9 implied goal total going into New York to face the Rangers. The Rangers have a 3.5 goal total. That, I got to say, that kind of surprised me, considering that the injuries that the Rangers have, Adam Fox being out. Then, I kind of remembered what I said on the last show. Adam Fox's impacts mainly come on the defensive end. Now, don't get me wrong. He's a very, very good offensive defenseman. He can run a power play. He can do all those things. He reminds me almost of Charlie McAvoy in that sense, where McAvoy from Boston is very, very good at both ends of the ice, but he really helps Boston out defensively more than he does offensively. And I think Adam Fox is kind of the same thing. So losing him, obviously not ideal, because there's nobody that can replace him in the lineup at both ends of the ice. But I don't think it hurts the Rangers as much offensively as we might make it out to be. It certainly hurts their bottom 6 that Philip Hedl is hurt, because then you're moving Vincent Trocheck up. You're left with, the Nick Bonino, Will Cooley, and Capo Caco is going to be dumped down to the third line. So I think it hurts the bottom 6 that Hedl is hurt. But as far as like the top half of the roster goes, I don't think it really changes that much. And I think that's why you're seeing a 3.5 total. Also because I think Detroit's been a little bit overrated. And, when you look at what they've done so far this year defensively, the top line for Detroit's at 3.1 expected goals against per 60 minutes, only 1.6 actual goals against. It speaks to how much the goaltending has helped in Detroit so far this year. So I kind of get why people want to play the Rangers here tonight, and that's why you're seeing a lot of ownership on them. On DraftKings, you're seeing double digits on both the top 2 lines. Zibanejad, Kreider, Wheeler, 11.1%. Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere, 10.2%. If I had to pick one, it's the Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere line. And I can almost hear Josh agreeing with me from wherever he is, because like I've watched quite a bit of Winnipeg games over the last couple of years where Blake Wheeler used to play. I've certainly watched my fair share of Rangers games already so far this season. There are spurts where he still looks like the guy that he was 5-6 years ago. He just can't. I just don't know if he can be that guy consistently for an entire game. And when you're talking about Zibanejad and Kreider, you're talking about shutdown matchups. You're talking about going into that top Detroit line that has been so good offensively so far this season. I think it's going to be one. It could be a game where Blake Wheeler's back down on the third line by like halfway through the second period or something like that. So I would prefer that Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere line. They've actually been fairly good in their sample together. Like over the last 3 years, 3.1 expected goals for, 2.8 actual goals for. That's also only while shooting 8%. Assuming Lafreniere's improved over the last couple of years, and I think he certainly has. You're getting two guys on that top power play unit in Trocheck and Panarin. Detroit does take their fair share of penalties, 3.8 times shorthanded per game. That's well above the league average that I think is down to 3.5 now. So, Eric Gustafsson can slide in onto that Rangers power play fairly easily. So I think this is a Rangers 2 game for me. Panarin, Trocheck, and Lafreniere. I really like them here tonight. I think they're perfectly fine and might actually end up in my single entry lineup here tonight. Detroit's interesting because there's no ownership coming in on that top line of DeBrincat, Larkin, and Raymond. And with Igor Shesterkin hurt, it's going to be Jonathan Quick in net for the Rangers. And if I look at the rest of that Detroit lineup, it's like, where else would the goals come from? Is it going to be JT Compher and Andrew Kopp? I mean, maybe. And I think the last time I slagged that line, I think Kopp had 2 goals. So, watch out for that here tonight. But if I were to think about it realistically, like if this Detroit team gets 4 or 5 goals here tonight, you got to figure the top line gets involved. So with Blake Wheeler going to that top line, it's going to make them worse defensively. There's just no way around it. And without Adam Fox, again, it's going to make the blue line weaker defensively as well. And then you have Igor Shesterkin not being in net. You have Jonathan Quick instead. So I don't know if I would get to Detroit 1 in my single entry. I think they're still playable in single entry. To tell you the truth, I think I'd be more inclined in like a 20 max or certainly a 150 or something like that. But I wouldn't sleep on the Red Wings here tonight. I think they're flying. They're firing a little bit hot right now, but it's not a bad matchup for them. So, especially if you're playing a lot of lineups, you might want to consider Detroit here tonight. All right, thank you for that water break. And if you've been watching the show, obviously I've been bringing up the Top Stacks tool quite a bit. Click the link in the description below if you want to join us here. We do have premium subscriptions available for our NHL stuff, whether you want to do weekly, whether you want to do monthly. You get those top stacks. You get these ownerships. Looks like Nathan McKinnon is going to carry a lot here tonight. You get all our projections. You get access to the Discord where, we update injury news, lineup information. People share probably a lot of what they're cooking. And, it's a bunch of guys that can't cook very well, except for Josh. A lot of them like to overcook their steaks. It gets a little bit weird at times, but it's a lot of fun. It's a good group of people. The tools are really, really helpful. We use them every day, whether on this show, whether talking amongst each other in DMs, or whether talking through the general Discord. So click the link below this video. Help us out. Come join the fun. NHL is just kind of getting started. We still got 5 more weeks left of this. All right, let's move on. We're starting to get to some late games here, and this is a very intriguing matchup. We have the Winnipeg Jets carrying a 3.2 total. They're going into St. Louis. The St. Louis Blues are carrying a 2.8 total. I don't know exactly what's going on with St. Louis. Like their team, don't get me wrong, I don't think is very good. They've scored 10 goals in their last 2 games. They have scored at least 3 goals in, I think, 4 out of 10 games now on the season. So they definitely have been getting on the board. They're not generating a lot of volume, but this isn't a team that usually generates a lot of volume. The St. Louis Blues are actually one of those teams that kind of started the shot quality movement in the NHL, if you want to call it that. like going back 6, 7, 8 years, even back to when Kevin Shattenkirk was still around, certainly, obviously Ryan O'Reilly was still there, David Perron, all those guys. It was a team that would focus less on shot volume and more on shot quality, and it would lead to some big nights. It would also lead to a lot of nights where, all three guys at the top line would combine for like 2 shots, and that would be it. So it is a very boom or bust team. The interesting part for me in this game is what they've done with their power play. St. Louis has loaded up their top power play unit. They put Pavel Buchnevich, Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou, and Braden Shen, along with Torrey Krug, on the top power play, or at least that's what they were showing in practice this morning. The reason why that's interesting is because if you look at St. Louis's numbers over the last few years, power play numbers over the last few years with Justin Falk and with Torrey Krug, it's night and day. Shots on the power play go down about 20% whenever Justin Falk's running it, and goals on the power play go down about 40% whenever Justin Falk's running it. So Torrey Krug has been the much better option for the St. Louis power play basically since he got there from Boston. And now they're finally loading up the top power play unit with all their top guys, including Torrey Krug. And they're facing a Winnipeg team that has really struggled on the penalty kill so far this year. They're not taking a lot of penalties. They're only at 3.6 times shorthanded per game, which is right around the league average. But they are giving up over a power play goal against per game. They have not been good so far this year when down one man or two. They're not allowing a ton of shots. It has been somewhat goaltending related, but as somebody that's watched the Winnipeg games, they're also missing assignments. They're letting guys, kind of sneak around behind them for tap-ins and for easy rebounds and things like that. So I think it's one of those cases where the shots against numbers can be kind of deceptive for Winnipeg. Like their penalty kill has looked just about as bad as their goals against numbers have shown. The problem is St. Louis doesn't draw a lot of power plays. They're actually drawing the fewest power plays per game on the season at just 2.7. But now that they've gone to a loaded top power play unit, I don't wonder if they don't just give them 75% of the power play time. This is a team that usually somewhat splits its power play units like 60-40. I could see this top unit, like I said, being closer to like 70-30, 75-25 even or something like that. So it might not be a bad spot for either of the top two St. Louis lines. My personal interest for this particular matchup is the line that's probably going to be going into the Winnipeg top line of Scheifele, Alex Iafallo, and Kyle Connor. And that's Robert Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich. It's a fairly cheap line, $12,900 tonight on DraftKings. They're coming in with positive leverage, 1.6% top two stack, 1.2% ownership. So you're getting a top line that is going to a stacked top power play unit against a team struggling on the penalty kill, and they have positive leverage as a filler stack. Like those are a lot of boxes to check off. Call it Chekhov's boxes, I guess. So as a joke that only I liked probably. So I kind of like that Buchnevich Thomas Kapanen line. They have been generating reasonably well, 55 shot attempts per 60 minutes so far this season. That's not great, but again, being anywhere as close to league average, I think league average is about 59 this season. Being anything close to that for this St. Louis team, I think, is nearly a miracle. So I kind of like Buchnevich, Thomas, and Kapanen here. They're, like I said, they're going into that Winnipeg top line that is really, really struggling with Alex Iafallo there. 2.1 expected goals for, 2.7 against per 60 minutes. Since Gabriel Velarde got hurt, it's just been a rotating cast. It's been, they have had Mason Appleton up there. I think Nikolai Ehlers spent a game up there. They just haven't been able to figure out anybody else to use in that role, and they're sucking because of it. I mean, let's face facts here. So I do like that St. Louis top line matchup. I do like their power play matchup, even if they only draw 2 or 3 power plays here tonight. So St. Louis won for me. The Winnipeg side, I want to play Winnipeg 1. As Josh and I like to bring up often, this is flowchart season to the max. because this doesn't appear to be a very difficult matchup. Normally in not difficult matchups, we say avoid Winnipeg, but they're coming in with a lot of ownership, 5% ownership per the Top Stacks tool. So I think Winnipeg 1 certainly in play here. Winnipeg 2, and Winnipeg, I think on Top Stacks, they're calling the Lowry Appleton Niederreiter line Winnipeg 3, so I'll call them Winnipeg 3. Winnipeg 3, I can't believe I'm saying this with Mason Appleton there, has actually been pretty good. 3.4 expected goals for, 1.7 against. The last couple games, they've been playing like 16 to 18 minutes. Like that's not those aren't third line minutes. Those are genuine second line minutes. St. Louis, that second line has struggled defensively with Braden Shen there. I don't mind Niederreiter, Appleton, and Lowry as one of those uber cheap filler stacks if you need them, if you're playing a super expensive Colorado stack or something like that. But I think it's the Buchnevich-Thomas line that I like best from this game, and certainly from the St. Louis side here tonight. All right, next game. Both teams have a 3.0 total. We have the Seattle Kraken going into Arizona. We have Joey Daccord in net for Seattle. We have Connor Ingram in net for Arizona. Both goalies have actually been off to a strong start so far this year, both with save percentages over 910. I think the league average is about 906 right now, so both above average. Ingram is one of Josh's favorite goalies. Don't want to put too many words in his mouth, but I'm pretty sure that's something that he would agree with. He is a Connor Ingram guy, as he might say. So interesting goaltending matchup. One thing I want to note here is the Arizona top line has really struggled to score so far this season at 5-on-5. Only two actual goals, per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. They have over 120 minutes together so far this season. This was a line that was over 3 last year. Obviously, it's a shooting percentage issue. They're only shooting 5.5% as a line. If they were double that, I wouldn't blink an eye. So I don't hate the idea of using Arizona 1. What I will note here is that Logan Cooley spent a couple shifts on the top line towards the end of their game on, I think it was Saturday afternoon. They lost at home to Winnipeg. I think they blew a lead in that game even. They did move Barrett Hayton down, and they moved Logan Cooley up. Now, Cooley is on the top power play unit, so one way or another, that top line would be perfectly correlated. But there's no ownership coming in on that Arizona top line here. 1.9% ownership, 5.2% top 2 stack. We don't know how Cooley, that's with Barrett Hayton. We don't know how Cooley would fit in there. But they're similarly priced on DraftKings here tonight. I think Cooley is 4,600 while Hayton is 5,000. So if you just put Hayton in there, if you want to play Arizona, if you just put Hayton in there and it is Cooley, you can late swap to him and you probably get that line as a combination in almost any tournament at under 1% ownership. So where that line is certainly due for some positive regression. The Seattle goaltending Daccord has been good this year, but Seattle goaltending is never really, he hasn't been elite, and it's certainly never been a strength of this team basically since their inception. I kind of have interest in that Arizona top line here tonight. And if it is Cooley up there, that line's only 17,700 on DraftKings. It's not really that expensive. So I do have interest in that Arizona top line. More importantly, I think if you're looking for a filler stack, Krause, Michelli, and Bukestad from the Arizona side. Michelli is a guy that Josh and I are both big fans of. He had tremendous playmaking numbers last year that are persisting again this year. The one thing Michelli is doing is adding a shooting dimension to his game. I think his shot attempts have gone up like 40% from last year. Still not elite, but at least close to league average, where he was basically shooting as much as like a middle pair defenseman last year. So that's an added dimension to his game. Lawson Krause, he's a guy that can score in bunches. He's popped a few goals over the last week. So again, if you're looking for one of those filler stacks, I don't mind Krause, Michelli, and Bukestad, but I think it is the Arizona top line I like most here tonight. On the Seattle side, I don't know. They're moving Kyler Yamamoto to the top line with Matty Beniers. They're moving Ty Cartier down to the fourth line. I kind of get why they're doing it. The top line has struggled to score so far this season, basically the entire season. Matty Beniers hasn't really had a good start at all. He has 0 goals and 4 assists in 12 games. He's at under a shot per game, which is basically where he was last year. So they're trying new things to get that going. This is the way I look at it. Kailer Yamamoto wasn't good enough to stay in Edmonton, where they are desperate for any good forwards outside of McDavid, Hyman, and Draisaitl. They let Yamamoto go after he spent seasons in the top 6 with McDavid and Draisaitl. And if you can't make it work with McDavid and Draisaitl, I got to question just how you can make it work literally anywhere else on a top line. So Seattle top line is a complete pass for me. Dipping down to the second line, I think, is where things get interesting. Schwartz, Eberle, and Wenberg have been fairly high event in a small sample so far this season. 68 shot attempts per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. That's pretty high event for any Seattle line. Schwartz has been a high event player basically all season long. And Eberle and Wenberg both play on the same power play unit. And Arizona has certainly struggled on the penalty kill so far this season. They're giving up over 10 goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. That's basically 1 per game so far this year. In fact, they're at exactly 1 power play goal against per game on the season. So again, you get you get Wenberg and Eberle on the same power play unit. The line has been very high event. They're going to avoid the top line matchup from Arizona. So I kind of like that Wenberg line from Seattle here tonight. I think they're perfectly fine to use. Per the top stacks tool, they're probably going to be highly owned relative to their top 2 stack percentage. But every Seattle line is. If you want just 2-man Wenberg and Eberle, I think that's perfectly fine. But I'm going to be honest. I think it's Arizona 1 that I like the most in this game. All right. Let's talk about Calgary. The Calgary Flames, they have a 3.1 total here tonight. They're going to be hosting the Nashville Predators. Nashville has a 2.8 total. It's going to be Jacob Markstrom in net for Calgary. Jacob Markstrom still has a sub 900 save percentage. It's going to be UC Saros probably in net for Nashville. Calgary's goaltending, what can you say? It's letting them down once again. I don't know how good this team actually is. But I will say that they have Dustin Wolf in the AHL, back-to-back goalie of the year in the AHL, off to another good start again this year, and they still won't call him out because they don't want to lose their backup goalie on waivers. It's just absolute insanity. I don't know how they're running that team anymore. There's certainly been a lot of upheaval, GM, coach, and all that stuff over the summer. So I have no interest in Calgary, especially with Andrew Mangiapane out. He got a 1-game suspension for a cross-check in the team's last game, so he's not going to be in tonight. Josh and I were talking on the last show that had Calgary on it, how other than Jonathan Huberdeau, Mangiapane's basically their only talented offensive winger. He's a guy that can both score and set up goals. Now, I think he's a better goal scorer than he is playmaker, but he can do both. Now that he's out, there's Jonathan Huberdeau, who's a very good playmaker, and then that's it. That's why Dylan Dubé's on the top line with Huberdeau and Elias Lindholm. Not a big sample over the last couple of years with Dubé and Lindholm together. 39 shot attempts for, 78 against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5 with Dubé and Lindholm on the ice without Tyler Toffoli from last year. Obviously, Toffoli's gone. He's in New Jersey now. They're just getting throttled whenever they're on the ice. I don't imagine it's a line combination that could make it through this game. So I have no interest in that Calgary. If anything from Calgary, it would be the Coleman Backlund duo. They're going to be going up against Nashville's top line. Nashville's top line has been trading chances a little bit so far here this season. But, Backlund and Coleman are probably going to get a rotating cast on their wing, especially with Mangiapane out. Adam Ruzicka got called up, but it looks like he's going to start on the 4th line. So I'm going to be honest, other than maybe Coleman and Backlund as a 2-man, if I was playing a bunch of lineups, I don't have any interest in the Calgary side here. For me, it's all about Nashville in this game. Again, Calgary goaltending has just been
I don't know if everybody else is watching the same Calgary team I am, but like this team has an 872 save percentage, 29th in the NHL. That's about where they were in the league in the league last year as far as ranking in the league goes by save percentage. Like this is not getting better. Nashville's top line with Gustav Nyquist there has been very, very good. 70 shot attempts generated per 60 minutes in their limited sample. They've been with or without Nyquist, that the top line duo Forsberg and O'Reilly has been putting up pretty high expected goals rates. Philip Forsberg right now is sporting a career high shots per game, shots per minute, and all that stuff. The problem is that he's shooting 4.4%. This is a guy that can usually finish around 12% in a season, if not higher. So if he starts coming around by shooting percentage and they're facing a team that has absolutely terrible goaltending, that's also going to be without probably their most talented offensive winger, I have questions about how well Calgary will do here tonight. Obviously, the problem is that Nashville top line is going to be facing off against Michael Backlund's line. They have been very good defensively, so you're really relying on the goaltending falling apart, but the goaltending's been falling apart, so what can you say? I will bring up Nashville's second line real quick. Tommy Novak, Luke Evangelista, Kiefer Sherwood, 12,400 here on DraftKings tonight. Nearly 60 minutes together so far this season, 3.3 expected goals, per 60 minutes at 5-on-5, 4.1 actual goals, generating 64 shot attempts per 60 minutes. Whether it's Novak, whether it's Evangelista, one of them is going to be on the top power play unit. Calgary doesn't take a ton of penalties, but again, Jacob Markstrom and Dan Vladash, have not been very good in net for Calgary. So I don't mind that Nashville second line kind of as like a filler, but I think it's Nashville one I like here tonight. Like they are coming in with positive leverage. Another one of those mid-price lines that people don't seem to want to play, under 2% ownership here on DraftKings. God help the goalie that faces Philip Forsberg when his shooting percentage starts going up. And if it happens to be Jacob Markstrom tonight, they could have a really good night. So I don't know if I'll get there in single entry. If I was playing a 20 max or something here tonight, I would be heavily considering that Nashville top line. I think they're certainly in play here. All right. I'll tell you guys about our NBA lineup generator package. We have a special deal going on right now. It's 50% off your first week and then $8.95 every week after that. You can get ownership settings and you can lock and swap players. You can export lineups all for under $5 for your first week. The lineup generator also comes in other DFS packages as well. But what you can do is use the algorithms here at Stochastic to make the best lineups that you can. They populate the lineups for yourself. It's very easy to use. Josh says all the time, he once had trouble copy and pasting, and even he can use the lineup generator. So obviously it's very easy to use, and you don't have to spend a bunch of time researching all the players. It takes advantage of the simulation tools that we have to try to give you the best lineups possible when factoring in expected production, expected upside, and also ownership. It'll save you a lot of time if you're somebody that, you have hockey practices with your kid after supper, or, when you got to do bath time when lineup lock is about to hit or something like that, and you don't have a lot of time. It's perfect for that. So be sure to check out our NBA lineup generator package. Again, you get 50% off your first week, $8.95 every week after that. So under $5 for the first week. You can check it out. Obviously, Greg Ehrenberg had a pretty big first week in NBA. Those guys are very, very smart. So if you're into NBA, if you want to get into NBA, this is a pretty good opportunity to do that. So check out the NBA lineup generator package, 50% off your very first week. All right, let's turn it back to hockey again here. Here's my favorite game of the night. We have the Pittsburgh Penguins with a 3.7 total. They're going into Anaheim. The Anaheim Ducks have a 2.9 total. These two teams played last week in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh lost 4-3. I think that was the game that we were talking about using the Anaheim top line. It was the second line that went off, or maybe it was vice versa. either way, Anaheim's certainly already shown the ability to put up goals and beat this very Pittsburgh team, but they're only carrying a 2.9 total. That's just a little bit higher than San Jose. 2.8 San Jose we'll talk about because we have to at the end of the show, but only a 2.9 total. Anaheim is very interesting for me here on this slate. Like, I think they're a lot better than they're getting credit for. The big change is obviously amongst their defensemen. Like, I'm a big believer that in the new NHL, basically all your defensemen have to be able to skate and move the puck. And they didn't have the defensemen to do that last year, and they got caved in. Jackson Lacombe has looked very good. Obviously, Pavel Mintyukov has looked phenomenal for the Ducks. Like, I'm talking like top pair material, almost immediately phenomenal for the Ducks. Getting rid of black holes basically at both ends of the ice and replacing them with two very capable defensemen makes a big difference. Whether this team is good enough to make the playoffs or anything like that, I'm not so sure, but they're not going to be the doormat that they were last year. It's just a matter of which Anaheim line to use because they're not that far apart in price. $1,300 difference on DraftKings tonight. A little bit bigger of a gap, $4,600 over on FanDuel. So you are going to get almost no ownership on the McTavish, Strome, Vetrano line. And it was McTavish, Strome, and Vetrano that I want to talk about. I'm going to bring up my picks article real quick. Free to read, again, over at Stokastic.com. Just head on over to the NHL section. But the matchup that they're going to have is Pittsburgh's top line. And Pittsburgh's top line is giving up 3.2 expected goals against and 4.4 actual goals against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. Rates that are 50% and 100% higher than when they're on the bench. That's a lot. The Pittsburgh top line has been very good offensively so far this year. What I think is happening is Pittsburgh struggled at 5-on-5 offensively last year, and I think there's a bigger emphasis to get that going this year. It's just costing them defensively, and that puts Anaheim 2 in a pretty good spot here tonight, I think. And again, not coming in with very much ownership on the top stacks tool. Anaheim 2, 17,200, 1.5% ownership, 3.6% top two stack percentage. That's pretty good leverage. And, Pittsburgh has looked leaky. Penalty kills, been good. We have to give them that. But they have looked leaky at 5-on-5. And with no one wanting to play that Anaheim line, I think Anaheim 2 is certainly in play. Now, I won't argue with Anaheim 1. Terry, Zegras, and Karlsson, they have also looked good so far this year. 2.9 expected goals for, 2.3 against in their minutes together. They are having trouble scoring. It is a shooting percentage thing. The line's only shooting 5%. You probably expect that to be around 9% or something like that, even with Karlsson being a rookie. But I think it's the Vetrano, McTavish, Strome line that I kind of like the best here. Another reason why is Pittsburgh really doesn't take a lot of penalties. They're below average on a per game basis. So, you don't get a ton. You won't get a ton of power play minutes out of Mason McTavish or anything like that. So I think it's Anaheim 2. I like on the Anaheim side. Pittsburgh, there's going to be some ownership on Pittsburgh, but honestly, not a lot. I'll bring up top stacks again real quick. 5.8% on the top line on DraftKings, 6.3% on the second line. Now, they have been priced up, $22,500 for the top line. But Anaheim is by far the most penalized team in the NHL so far this season. They're giving up 5.1 power plays per game. No other team is at 4.4. So they're giving up way too many power plays to the opponent. Now, Pittsburgh's power play has struggled, obviously, so far this season. Looked better against San Jose, but whose doesn't? But they might get a lot of opportunities here tonight. You only get Gensel and Crosby on the top power play unit, so I think that's why you can dip down to Malkin and Riley Smith. Riley Smith has obviously jumped to the top power play unit. He's looked really good there. I think he's a better option than Raquel. It's not just a results-based thing. It's the fact that I think Riley Smith has a more diverse set of offensive skills, playmaking, zone entries, those types of things than Raquel does. I think Raquel is a better goal scorer. but obviously that's not helping, and they need guys that can do other things. So I think either Pittsburgh top line, Pittsburgh power play stack, I think is certainly in play here tonight. Might get a little bit expensive, but we have gone through some very cheap fillers. I do like Pittsburgh one the best, but I think both top lines are certainly in play here tonight. If you want to save some money and dip down to the second line, no problem with that whatsoever. All right, very important game coming up next. New Jersey Devils 2.8 total going into Colorado. Colorado has a 3.6 total. Right now, it looks like Colorado's top line is going to be probably the highest owned line of the night. 20% expected ownership on DraftKings here. The reason for that is Jonathan Drouin is back on the top line, and that saves thousands of dollars when compared to Arturi Lehkonen. You lose that power play correlation, which kind of sucks, but I don't think it's really a big deal in this matchup. New Jersey's still missing Jack Hughes, still missing Nico Hischier. The penalty kill really hasn't looked that great so far this year. So I think it's a great spot for Colorado. One, they're just coming in with a lot of ownership. And here's the thing, is like they're coming in at 20% expected ownership. And we just talked about that Pittsburgh top line. Only $1,100 more expensive and coming in at like a third of the ownership of Colorado. And Pittsburgh's facing a team that takes way more penalties than New Jersey does. So, like, I'm not going to say don't play Colorado here tonight. I even think Nathan McKinnon is a fine one-off. Like, the guy keeps shooting. He's just not scoring. And eventually those shots are eventually going to start going in, and he's going to fill the net. In fact, I even wrote Mikko Rantanen up in the picks article today because, him and McKinnon are still generating offense so far. They're up to, I think it's 3.0 expected goals per game, 5.0 actual goals so far this season. So they are still generating a lot. They were scoring before their recent shutout streak. I have no problem playing them. I just think when you look at a much lower owned Pittsburgh line in what I think is a better power play spot, it just seems hard to get there in a single entry. I certainly once you're playing 150 lineups or whatever, it's just about figuring out how much Colorado you want. But for me, I think it makes more sense to dip down to the Colorado second line, 15,100. They've been pretty good so far this year, 76 shot attempts in a very small sample. Nichushkin, 16 shot attempts per 60 minutes of 5-on-5, but he hasn't scored yet. Brian Johansson, 14 shot attempts, which is per 60 minutes, which is really high for him. So they are shooting, they are generating, they are going to be a little bit overowned, but with Lehkonen and Johansson, you get power play correlation. So I do like Colorado too a little bit more, just because I think there is a viable, much lower owned alternative to Colorado one. That's basically my entire argument. It's not that they're in a bad spot. They're in a fine spot. It's not that they're a bad line. They are a good line. It's not that I don't think they'll score. I think they'll probably get at least one goal here tonight. It's just, again, I just think that there is another comparative line that you can play at considerably less ownership. That makes more sense. On the New Jersey side, they switched up their lines quite a bit last game. The Top Stacks tool does have Toffoli, Bratt, and Michael McLeod skating together. Toffoli, Bratt, Timo, and Andre Palat are all going to be on the top power play unit, it looks like. So Colorado does take a lot of penalties. I think that's one thing to note here. Colorado, certainly one of the most penalized teams in the league. They're up at 4 times shorthanded per game so far this season. It's 5th most power plays given up per game. Obviously, New Jersey missing their 2 top centers, but you look at the guys that are left, you still have Tyler Toffoli, you still have Timo Meier, you still have Jesper Bratt, you still have Luke Hughes. Even Andre Palat's not that bad right now. So, I think I would lean Timo Meier and Andre Palat as a little 2-man. Like, Meier has been shooting the puck. He's just been getting a little bit unlucky. But I think it's Colorado too that I like best in this game. All right, last game of the slate. Philadelphia, 3.7 total going into San Jose. The San Jose Sharks have a 2.8 total. Philly's going to be starting Samuel Ersson in net. Mackenzie Blackwood going for San Jose. Samuel Ersson for the Flyers has an .815 save percentage so far this year. I don't think think he's a good goalie. He's certainly never shown any reason at the NHL level why we would think he might be. But they are getting Sean Couturier back in the lineup tonight. Morgan Frost comes out. I assume they're going to go back to a somewhat normal configuration, which would be Couturier, Tippett, and Cam Atkinson on the top line. There's going to be a lot of Philly ownership here tonight. I mean, how can there not be after San Jose gave up 20 goals in 2 games? Like, football team, there are good football teams that don't even do that. That's why, we have the top stacks run with Frost, because that stuff with Couturier was announced just before we came on the air. But you can see 20% ownership on that Frost line when he was expected in. I think like pretty close to at least a quarter of all lineups tonight are going to have some sort of Philly stack in them. I think that's a pretty reasonable assumption. I certainly understand why. I'm not going to say don't. The thing is that we don't know what the lineup is going to look like. Couturier coming back is a very significant shift for them. And this is also the very last game on the slate starting at 10:30 Eastern. So there's every other game will be locked. There won't be a lot of late swapping available. So you'll have to be very careful with your lineup if you do play the Flyers here tonight. But obviously all the Flyers are certainly in play. Konechny, wherever he ends up, it doesn't really matter. The top line, I assume it's going to be Couturier, Tippett, and Atkinson. I think that's what I would probably stack if I were to play the Flyers here tonight. Couturier, Tippett, and Atkinson have played pretty well so far this season. They're not going to be an expensive stack. I don't think they're going to be highly owned because people don't know what the lines are and they won't want to guess on the line combinations of the very last game on the slate. So if you want to be really risky, I think going with a Tippett, Couturier, Atkinson stack makes a lot of sense here tonight. You're going to get 2 guys at least on the top power play unit. They have played well so far this season. They had been skating together right up from like game 3 right up until Couturier got hurt. I don't know if it's going to be a particularly popular combination, like I said, because it's the last game of the slate and people aren't going to want to leave thousands of dollars on the table if they have to make a crazy swap. So the Flyers are going to be highly owned, but I don't know if that particular combination is going to be highly owned. So I don't mind Couturier, Tippett, and Atkinson certainly here tonight. The San Jose side, I know I slagged them in the last show. Seems like rightly, considering they gave up 10 goals. But they moved William Eklund to the top line with Thomas Hertl and Fabian Zetterlund. Now, William Eklund is their top prospect. He's looked fine in the bits of the San Jose games I've watched. It's just that the entire team, especially the defensemen, are terrible. But what I did notice about San Jose is they have Eklund and Hertl on the top power play unit. And they moved Jacob McDonald to the top power play in the last game. That was something I wrote about in the offseason quite a bit that I thought they would do. For whatever reason, they went to Kyle Burroughs and eventually moved away from Kyle Burroughs. They went to Jacob McDonald last game, and they scored twice on the power play with Jacob McDonald running it. He's a guy, he's kind of a journeyman, but he ran a lot of power plays in the AHL. That's kind of the quality of players we're dealing with here. And Philly does have a great penalty kill. And McDonald, I think, is listed as a winger on DraftKings here tonight, even though he is a defenseman. So kind of sucks. But like a 2-man of McDonald and Eklund comes in under $6K on DraftKings, and it gets you to all those super expensive Colorado players if you want them. So Eklund moving up to that Hertl line with Zetterlund, it kind of piques my interest. I'm not advocating full stacking the San Jose Sharks. I haven't lost my mind yet. But one-offing McDonald, one-offing Eklund, two-manning Eklund and Hertl, like those types of things I think are certainly in play here tonight, especially with Samuel Ersson in net. Like, yeah, the Sharks have struggled scoring goals. Ersson's really struggled making saves. So I think there are certainly one-offs you can pick from the Sharks here tonight. All right. Those are all 10 games so far on this slate. Thank you for bearing with me as we went through these games. The goaltending tonight there are some good spots that I like. What I wrote up in the picks article was Devin Levi. Whether him or Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen goes tonight doesn't really matter. But Carolina, they've generated a ton of volume. Those goalies are 6,900 on DraftKings anytime a goalie's coming at 7K or under going into Carolina, I'm pretty tempted to roster them just because of the shot volume that they'll probably face. I don't mind UC Saros, Nashville, going into Calgary. He's reasonably priced as long as he gets to start. I mean, Kevin Lankin is the same price. Calgary is a team that really, really struggles to generate good quality. And with Andrew Mangiapane out, I can't imagine that's going to change here tonight. So Saros is another one of those goalies that could face a lot of volume, but not a lot of quality, as will whoever starts for Anaheim, whether it's John Gibson or Lucas Dostal. So Levi, Gibson, or Saros are probably the three goalies I'm looking at the most here tonight. I think Semyon Varlamov, if you don't mind paying up a little bit for the Islanders, certainly makes a lot of sense as well. Before I get to my defenseman and my hat trick pick, just want to give a shout out to Bet365. They have been our sponsor for the entire season so far. They have sponsored this show. Thank you so much to them. Coming up, we have the NBA Deeper Dive at 5:30 Eastern with Josh Engelman and Adam Schur. And then the NBA Live Before Lock an hour after that, 6:30 Eastern with Greg Ehrenberg and Eric Lindquist. Defenseman. I wrote up Roman Josi in the picks article. Like, he is by far and away the highest projected defenseman that we have at Stokastic here tonight. In fact, why don't I just show you just how big that gap is. On DraftKings, we have Roman Josi at nearly 15 points and Kel McCarr at nearly 11.5. So about a 3.5 point gap. So yeah, Roman Josi, definitely one of our favorite plays here. Obviously, Erik Karlsson for the Penguins going into Anaheim with the way that Anaheim takes their penalties. On the other side of the Anaheim game, I don't mind Pavel Mintyukov. I think he's looked really, really good so far this season, especially if you're making some sort of Anaheim stack. That makes a lot of sense. The Philly defensemen, they're all in play. Like, everybody that plays for Philadelphia is in play. It's the San Jose Sharks. Travis Sanheim obviously would be the guy I'd want to target. Brent Burns has been priced down a lot for Carolina. He's technically on the second power play unit, but they relatively split their units, so I don't mind him in the mid-price range. Torrey Krug, I mentioned how St. Louis loaded the top power play unit. He's down to 4K. He's not a guy that racks on peripherals, so he really does need goals and assists to have DFS value, but at 4K might be worth the risk. For cheap defenseman, Connor Clifton, 2,500 from Buffalo. With Matthias Samuelsson out, he'll probably have to play about 19, 20 minutes. He's stone mid price on DraftKings, very much live for the shot block bonus. I mentioned Jacob McDonald from San Jose, winger on DraftKings, but he is a cheap defenseman on FanDuel. Brock Faber from Minnesota, 3,500. He's getting minutes as long as Jared Spurgeon stays out. Radko Gudas for Anaheim, he might have to block a lot of shots facing Pittsburgh here tonight. Ryan Graves from the Pittsburgh side, like, if you don't want to pay up for an expensive Pittsburgh defenseman, Graves can both shoot and block shots, so he can really rack up the peripherals, and I think he's at 3,500 on DraftKings. That's a price where I'll play him. I won't play him when he's like 4,300 or something, but 3,500, I think he's very much in play. And obviously Eric Gustafsson for the Rangers. As long as he's still running the top power play unit for the Rangers, they have a 3.5 total. I think he makes a lot of sense as a cheap defenseman here tonight. And my hat trick pick on this slate, is Seth Jarvis, Carolina Hurricanes. People are saying no NBA here tonight. Well, it was on the show. I'm kind of like Ron Burgundy. If you put it on the teleprompter, I'm going to read it. Or it was on the schedule, I think. Sorry. But Seth Jarvis is my hat trick pick. I think Carolina has a good game here against Buffalo tonight. It's just a matter of which guys get on the board. I'm picking Seth Jarvis as my hat trick pick. All right, we got to get out of here. We've ran for over an hour. Josh will be back with me on Thursday. Thank you so much, everybody, for bearing with us. Hopefully, we get some winners here tonight. Be sure to send those along. Be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Be sure to give us 5 stars if you're downloading the podcast. Hopefully, we can get some green. If not, there's always a new day tomorrow. But until then, thank you very much, and good luck tonight, everyone.